I have shared this before, but not in a really long time. I remember my first memory in preschool being othered and feeling like for the first time, oh, I'm different from everybody, and not feeling proud about that. And I remember it came through this preschool assignment where all the kids were asked to make a collage of their families. And they brought all these magazines out filled with all these white folks.
Wow.
And I'm flipping through the magazines and I'm watching everybody else get to work. They're cutting out, they're going. And I'm like, I don't see anyone who looks like my mom. I don't see anybody who looks like me or my brother. I see lots of options for white daddies. And so I chose like the like Men's Warehouse version of my dad, like briefcase, like suited, booted, slicked hair, which my dad was a carpenter. So like there was nothing truthful about that. But I remember cutting out my dad and then making the decision after looking around and surveying the room to just do what everyone else was doing, which is cut out white people.
Wow.
And so I made this family collage full of white people that the teachers then saw and they're like, this is awkward. So I remember a teacher coming over and trying to like redirect me to this little black girl who looked nothing like me. I think it was like a pancake. It was like an Aunt Jemima like ad.
Lord.
And it was like a little girl with like pressed hair, dark skin, you know, it just nothing like me. And I just remember I froze her out. I just acted like I didn't hear her because I didn't want my difference to be highlighted. I just wanted to pretend to be white. I thought that I could get away with that on the paper. And then that collage came home. And this woman took one look at that and she was like, oh, her famous line is, Houston, we got a problem. And so she like rounded up my brother and I, and we were told to sit down at the dinner table, and she whipped out a gang of Ebony and Essence magazines, spread them all over the table. And she said, we are going to redo this assignment together as a family. You will be replacing this little white girl and that little boy. And my brother had to do the assignment too. And we did. And my mom taped she let me keep my little businessman dad, even though that was a lie too, because he came home covered in dust as a carpenter every day. But she let me keep him. And then she put that collage on my wall next to my bed so that it was the first thing I saw every day and the last thing I saw every night. And she was Beautiful. Like, this is who you are. This is who you will be proud of. And it really reinforced that sense of pride. Yeah. I had that at home. I got that at home. It was instilled in me from an early age. There was like a counter narrative coming at me strong from my mom that really did challenge some of the messages that I was getting like just intrinsically. It's like something, you feel it in this country. It's not something that needs to be told to you. Eventually it will be in different ways, but it was a quiet sense of my inferiority. And my mom constantly countered that. And I just feel so grateful. I mean, I feel grateful that I have an example of Black womanhood that I can reference from the time I was born. Right. One that is beautiful and elegant and sophisticated and smart and powerful and gentle and all these amazing things. Like my mom is like, I mean, if I could be half the woman she is, then I've done something. So like, I feel like, so I just feel beautiful. Like I'm less exposed, I'm less vulnerable to allowing messages from the media to influence how I see myself when I'm raised with somebody like this, you know? But I do think about like, as a Black woman or as a woman, as a mixed race person, if I had a white mother, would that be different? Would I be searching outside of my household for that sense of like identity and I don't know, she was my mirror. I had that. Yes. So I really feel blessed and I feel anchored by the kind of mom that I had. It's made such a difference in my life. And it's not to say that I didn't have like an identity crisis or two, you know, like I think those are inevitable.
Yes. So I was going to ask about the inevitability because my son, like you, has an experience that's not my experience and it's not my husband's experience. Yeah. So in a lot of ways, neither of us can fully relate to what it is like to be truly biracial, mixed race. Yeah. Is there something isolating about that? And two, is there an inevitability that it will be something that he struggles with no matter what we do at home?
It's hard to say. It's hard to speak for Mavi's generation because I do think this is a very different world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For my generation, our generation, I think we were raised in a very black and white world. So you had to check a box.
Yeah.
And you had to pick a lane culturally, socially. Which group are you hanging out with? Which table are you sitting at?
Right.
And I've always been a chameleon. So I feel like I was able to, my friends were predominantly white growing up because that was the pool that I grew up in.
Yeah.
But when we got into high school and there were more black folks, I remember feeling like, oh, suddenly I'm like the black girl that hangs out with the white girls. Like I'm the token black friend. And like, they're not messing with me. Like the black girls weren't trying to mess with me. And I felt like I started to feel that conflict of like living between two worlds. But ultimately I joined the step team.
Yes.
And that was my access pass.
That's blackity black. Step team.
But you know what's so funny is like I was also a cheerleader.
Okay.
So I would literally
has a balance.
Yeah. This is like the epitome of code switching in a sartorial sense. I would literally at like football games, basketball games, I would do my cheerleading thing with all the white girls. There were a couple of black girls on the team, like Victoria won, I think.
Yeah.
And then I would run under the bleachers, change into my step uniform.
Oh my God.
And then run out to the middle of the field with all the black girls and do my, you know what I mean? And you know what's so funny? Of all the things I've done in my life, the thing that my dad will tell you he's the most proud of is that step thing you did. That you have
Nothing
so
like
much
a good
rhythm.
step show.
He's like, that is amazing. Yeah, like literally, I could meet like Michelle Obama and have a conversation, and he's just like
The clap and stomp.
the clap and the stomp on the beat. Like that was really good. So anyway, I feel in our generation there was like you had to choose which lane you were going to be in, and for my brother who's less interested in being a chameleon, he's a total rebel. He came out the womb as a punk rocker. He had a 6-inch green mohawk. He would wear chip black nail polish and Marilyn Manson shirts and leather jackets with like studs. And my mom and him would butt heads every Sunday because he wanted to wear that to church. And she was just like,
Black
no,
church?
you're not. Black church.
Oh yeah, no.
Like Southern Baptist
Yeah, right.
church.
Oh,
and
yeah.
he was not embraced by the black community because he did not conform to the norms of our community. But at the same time, he was like the only brown kid with a green mohawk in the mosh pits of the Bay Area. So,
Right.
But as you said, you eventually, it doesn't matter what culture or community you feel more comfortable around that you opt into. Ultimately, the world will
Tell you.
decide
Yep.
and tell you who you are and how you're seen. And when my brother was followed by the police and pinned down to the ground violently because he was misidentified for a criminal a block from our house, it didn't matter that he hung out with white people.
Right.
It didn't matter that he listened to punk rock music. He is a black man in America.
Yes.
And that is the wake-up call that you get as a black person, as a person of color. And so I think those realities are still ever present. So I hope Mavi has a different experience. He also, I think socioeconomics plays a part as well. I mean, he's gonna grow up in a really nice neighborhood at a private school. You know, maybe he will be sheltered from some of that, but I hope by the time he's driving his car, he will be safer than we were, than our brothers were. And I hope that he has enough of a sense of pride instilled by his strong grandmother, his strong black mother, that he will never feel like he has to disassociate from his blackness in order to be accepted or to feel good about himself. I just can only say that I hope that for him.